Hello everyone, I am Gonzalo Fernandez from memoQ's marketing team and would like to welcome you to a new edition of memoQ webinars. Today we are going to present our latest release, memoQ 8.6, which brings improvement in many areas, including integrations with new MT engines, terminology enhancements, productivity boosters, and many other interesting things. Our presenter will be Gergely Vander, Product Manager at memoQ. This presentation will last approximately 30 minutes, and there will be 10 more for questions. So if you have questions during the session, you can write them down on the question panel. We will try to answer every question on the go, but we will also leave for the very end those we find relevant for the QA session. The webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to find it in a few days on memoq.com or our YouTube channel. So it's time to start, and let's give now the floor to Gergely.
Thank you, Gonzalo, and hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about the latest version of memoQ 8.6. This new version will bring many gradual improvements to things that we have been working on in the last months and maybe even years. But as Gonzalo mentioned, I think the first and foremost thing that it brings value in is in the world of integrations. We are increasingly seeing that in addition to just adding more and more features and functionality to memoQ, it is becoming increasingly important to connect to the rest of the world and increase the value of the product by making it work better with other pieces of software and other services around the translation world. There are two main themes inside integrations. One is the theme of content management systems, which is an area that is obviously extremely important especially for translation companies and their customers. And this is arguably an area where we have quite a bit of work to do. And the other huge area, which is very much buzzing nowadays, is the world of machine translation. But in addition to this, there are also some smaller improvements, and I'm going to talk about each of these in detail. So in the area of content management systems, a few months ago we added support for to connect WordPress to memoQ and to set up translation projects for WordPress-based websites using memoQ and memoQ Server. And even when I introduced that feature or set of features, I already mentioned that the general goal was to set up a framework where not only WordPress, but many other content management systems will be able to connect to memoQ. And this version is a milestone in that long journey. From version 8.6 on, technically, any content management system is connectable to memoQ or memoQ Server, which means that we have a new API that will be made public very soon, and all of our customers or any party interested in integrated content management systems with memoQ Server will be able to do so. But in terms of actual new integrations, there is nothing to announce at this point. So technically what has happened is that with this new version of with this first public version of our content management systems API, any content management system is connectable to memoQ, and any file format is supported, not just WordPress XLIF. And also in memoQ's project templates. Users will be able to choose how to import each file format, I mean, which settings and configurations to use for each, which will be familiar to any user already regularly working with project templates in memoQ. Okay, so much about CMS, and on to machine translation. With 8.6, we put a strong focus on the Asian market, which is often very different from European or American market, and it has its own peculiarities and own specific needs. And to try to address at least a good chunk of these needs, we are introducing 2 new integration partners, or 2 new machine translation services that we are going to support from now on. One is memoQ, which is a Chinese service that aggregates many machine translation providers into one service. So you will be able, or our users in China and the Asian market will be able to use our memoQ machine translation plugin and their memoQ subscription to access many Asia-specific machine translation providers that you probably haven't even heard of. And of course, many of the mainstream ones we also know, like Google and the others. And the other machine translation provider I want to talk about is Textra, which is a Japanese government project. And this is especially useful in the field of patent translation in Japan and the Asian market. It supports all the big Asian languages: Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and probably some others, and any combinations of these. And it's something that is very much demanded in the Japanese market. And in other topics in integrations are in our own memoQ server API and the resources API. We have made changes to in the field of terminology, especially. We have updated all the terminology, or much of the terminology related documentation of the API. We have added TBX format import and export through our API. And also from now on, we are supporting weighted word counts querying for integrations. So this means that systems like Plunet or XDRF or any translation management system will be able to ask memoQ server about the weighted word counts of a project, so that this information is directly available instead of having to calculate the weighted word counts in the other systems. So these improvements are in the main memoQ server web services API, and there is the other type of API that we have, which we call the resources API. And the resources API is receiving an improvement or a new chunk of functionality that enables it to be the basis of a terminology search portal or engine. So our customers will be able to set up a web page or web application for their customers to search and browse the terminology that they have built using memoQ or Q term. Okay. And on from integrations to specific new features of 8.6. There are still, as you have seen in the last few releases or last few feature releases of memoQ, we have been providing improvements in the field of terminology, and we still have some of those left. Probably it won't take forever. At some point, we are going to stop these types of features, at least for a while. There are some small and some bigger things here. Users will be able to copy term data from the memoQ term details window. This is something that has not been working in recent releases, and this is something that we are giving back. We have made some slight improvements in the field of supporting right-left languages. So there have been some issues with aligning text in the user interface of both memoQ and QTerm when it came to Hebrew or Arabic text that flows from the right to the left and should be aligned to the right side of the box it is displayed in. So this has been fixed or improved. And we have made some quality of life improvements in the term extractor, which will from now on allow you to select some text that has been found on the target side and add it as the target of the terms or target of the term-based entries that you are extracting. And I think it's probably a good idea to try to show some of these things in action, because it's probably quite difficult to imagine them. So, for example, this I'm showing the memoQ window, and under the translation results pane, there is the detailed view of a term-based entry, and from now on you can select text here and just put it on the clipboard. So this is one small thing. In the another thing I was talking about is using the term extractor and adding target terms right from the occurrences of the terms found. So in this case, we are translating from English to German, and some occurrences of the word template has been found, and I can just go to the right-hand side of the occurrences window where we see a translation, and I encounter the German equivalent of the word template, which is Vorlage, and I can just right-click it and add it as a target for the term-based entry that is going to be exported at the end of the term extraction session. Okay, I'm not going to attempt to work with right-left text, so I think I move back to my presentation. There is another significant thing regarding term bases and memoQ. You might remember that with version 8.1, we gave you the possibility to work with term bases that have less languages than the project you are in, which is very useful for those who are working with multilingual projects but bilingual term bases. So this is possible since 8.1. And with 8.3, we've improved our API to allow and support these kinds of projects. So since 8.3, you are able to use the API as well. to set up a project which contains a term base with less languages than the project itself. And with 8.6, the new thing is supporting the same in project templates. So when you are creating a project from a template in version 8.6, you also have the choice from now on to either leave the term base as it is, so just use a bilingual term base in a multilingual project, or add all the missing languages to the term base at the creation of the project. Okay, moving on to productivity related features. We have some neat new additions to quality assurance. I think I'll try to show it right away. I think the biggest changes are in the reports that we are exporting. The new things there are that we are providing some additional information in the header of the QA report file that we are exporting. From now on, you will see the names of the term bases used for the quality assurance task, and you will see a list of the documents itself, or if it's many documents, you will see a list of maybe 5 of them and the number of the documents that have been checked. And what else? Languages of the languages that have been checked for this specific QA task, and probably nothing else, nothing that I'm forgetting. So this is about the header of the QA report file. And there is something a new thing that is very neat, I think. So what you are seeing here is that we have an exported view of the QA report where we are just seeing formatting and number related warnings and errors. If you look down here in the list, there are only 2 categories here, numbers and formatting. And the new thing here is inversion of this selection. So with a click of the button, you can change this to every other type of QA warning and error. So basically, if you want to see everything but numbers, or everything but, I don't know, punctuation, you have a new way to do that very easily and quickly. Okay. And another new thing is not really in the QA report itself, but the general workings of QA warnings. Just a very small thing. In the last few items, you are seeing warnings from the auto-translatables check, which now also highlights the part that contains the supposed mistake, instead of just sorry, I'm coughing quite a bit. So instead of just telling you that there is an issue with a specific auto-translatable part, from now on you will see where and what exactly is wrong according to the QA check. Okay. Okay, I think this kind of tells what I wanted to show about the report. And if you look at the QA configuration itself, then I can show you one more change or addition, which is the possibility to to separately check non-translatables from terminology. So up until this point, non-translatables were always checked if and only if terminology was checked. And from now on, these two things are independent from each other. So you can check for non-translatables like company names or product names, but not check for terminology, or vice versa. Okay, back to the presentation. We have made the task tracker window responsive. I mean, responsive in the sense that it is now possible to meaningfully resize it. So I try to show you what this is about. So I right-click, okay. It cannot work with QA and task tracker at the same time. So I'm bringing up a task tracker window, and before this version, well, several things were less than ideal. So these messages on the left-hand side showing you operations that have been carried out by memoQ in the background, and often the description of these operations is relatively long, and it was quite tedious to set it up in a way that you could set this window up in a way that you could read all the text. We have fixed it now in a way that when you enlarge the window, then this part of the or this panel of the window is enlarged as well, and memoQ remembers the way you set up this window. So these are basically quality of life improvements for those users who regularly need to come back to this window because they are busy project managers or they have done many tasks in the last hours and they need to check back on them. And last but not least, okay, something about backup. What did I want to say about backup? Yeah, I think what I wanted to say about backup is relates back to content management systems. So what we have done with is that all the content, all the data that is related to CMS connections will also be backed up together with all the memoQ server data from now on. And I will talk a little bit about our Customer Insight program. This is the set of features that allows our users to opt in to a service or program where they can report back their usage data to memoQ Ltd. So if you opt in, you allow memoQ to send us information about how you are using our software, which parts of it you are using most frequently, and so on and so forth. And up until version 8.6, this was something that only happened in the memoQ desktop client. So technically, only the memoQ desktop client was able to send information about usage to us. And from 8.6 on, we have turned this into a framework that can be incorporated to practically any member of the memoQ product family. Most obviously, memoQ server is a very important one there. So from now on, technically, memoQ server can receive news, usage data collection features. But it's not even memoQ server where we made the first steps, but the so-called deployment tool, which is responsible for installing and administering memoQ servers, as well as backing up memoQ servers. So you can use this part of the software to set up regular backups nightly for your memoQ server. And what we have done is enabling this backup operation to send us information about how much data memoQ server has in various types of resources, like term bases, translation memories, or the projects themselves, and so on. And why we are doing this, as always, we are only doing this to be better positioned to serve you better, to be able to improve the software. We have a very specific goal with this, and the specific goal is improving memoQ server backup performance as soon as possible, probably within months from now, or at least somewhere in the next year. We want to be able to ship features that significantly improve memoQ server backup performance. And obviously decrease the time it takes to finish the backup, which is a regular pain for some of the largest memoQ server customers. Okay, and there is one thing that is kind of always happening. We are always improving our document import and export functionality. And we're adding two things. One is on the slide and the other is not. We have added a new filter for VCO files. We actually have been supporting VCO for quite a while, but only the ancient format of versions of VCO before 2013. So we are now adding support for the more modern VCO file format. And not only for direct VCO files, but also for VCO files embedded in Word documents or Excel workbooks. And another thing I wanted to say about document import and export is probably not even document import and export, but package import and export. And more specifically, it is about transit. So from now on, if you have a transit package that contains pre-filled machine translations, we are now giving you the option to pour those machine translated material into a separate translation memory and basically access it as if it was TM content. Obviously, we see that that just presenting a machine translation suggestion as if it was a translation memory segment is very problematic. So we are also allowing you to set up a choice of penalty for these kinds of segments. In plain English, what will happen is that you can pour those machine translations from the VCO package into a TM and say that all TM hits coming from that special TM must have their match rates decreased by 10% or so. This is a number that you choose. And I think I've just finished 2 minutes earlier than before, but maybe we will have more times for questions.
Yes, there are a few questions. I will try to order them based on the topics you presented. So there is an interesting question regarding the CMS API and what happens if, for instance, a memoQ server customer wants to develop a connection to, let's say, a potential CMS? How does it work? Do they need to do it themselves, or can they actually request our professional services? So that's one of the questions.
Both possibilities are open. So you have the choice of just requesting documentation from us, or not even requesting. We will make it public very soon if it's not public already, and you could do it all yourself if you wish to. Or you can also turn to our professional services team and request either assistance, or maybe depending on what you need, it might even be a complete development project carried out by our professional services team to support a specific CMS that you need.
Okay, so in that case, if the customers do not have the team, they can just simply contact our professional service department and get in touch, and we will help them.
Correct.
Okay, regarding now machine translation, David was asking if we had any plan to introduce Amazon MT service in the near future, and maybe we can explain to everyone what are the plans for MT integrations.
We are looking at Amazon MT, and we have been looking at it for several months now. Right now, no release is imminent, but I wouldn't be surprised if memoQ was able to support Amazon MT somewhere around the middle of next year, either as a traditional memoQ MT plugin or through one of those companies that provide access to several services. For example, as I explained today, TMX-Mall is a service that connects to other MT services, and we are looking at these kinds of so-called aggregators with a lot of interest, because if they can add support for an MT service quicker than we do, then it is something that can at least get to our customers through them, and get to our customers sooner, so in some cases, than if we developed the same MT plugin.
Okay, thank you. So there is another question that refers more specifically to when you were demoing I think it was the QA report, and Virginia was asking, will the showing of where the error is by highlighting also include the error of some space missing before or after the tab? So that was her question.
Ooh, I don't really know the workings of all these QA checks by heart. So to explain for everybody, some QA checks in memoQ give you the location of the problem and can highlight the problem in your text and tell you where exactly the problem is, and in some cases even what to do with it, and in some cases even there is an autocorrection provided. And in some other cases it's not. For the specific question, honestly I do not know, but let's remember this question and note it down so that we can answer it later.
Okay, great. There is a few more questions. If we have any plans to introduce new terminology features to QTerm basis?
For QTerm basis specifically, well, there are lots of things. So basically, we do have a backlog of things that we want to add to QTerm sometime in the near or midterm future. But at the same time, we are also very seriously looking at taking what we already have and working on the presentation so that it's a more modern user interface with better visuals, better user experience, and better presentation of the functionality that we have. So I think in the coming months, probably we will put more emphasis on this part, better presenting the current functionality, and after on, when we will be able to achieve that, then we can move on to adding more functionality.
Okay, thanks. There are a few more questions. I think this is a question that comes up a lot, and I think it's worth addressing it. It's not necessarily about the presentation, but they're asking whether memoQ will be compatible with iOS.
iOS?
Yes.
Okay. So this is about taking, being able to use your iPad or even iPhone to run memoQ itself. Well, not in the current form, because memoQ is deeply connected to Microsoft Windows and all the software frameworks around Microsoft Windows. So the current product is not really something that is feasible to port into iOS or any other operating system as it is, and probably it wouldn't even fit those smaller screens very well and so on. But we are putting a lot of emphasis on web in our current work that you are not seeing yet, but you will see soon. And if we have when we will have better interfaces for the web, it will become more feasible to use devices like an iPad for at least for some types of tasks. And another thing I can say about iOS is that an iOS device will become very useful for memoQ users, maybe just a couple of months from now, where we will introduce an application called Hey memoQ, which will give voice recognition to memoQ for great many languages, and with fun features like voice comments and so on. Yeah, I think that's all I can say about iOS at the moment.
Okay, I will make the last question, which I think it's very important as well. It's about compatibility between versions. And Lada was asking, are there any issues expected with translators who are still working with older versions in memoQ? For example, if she updates her server to 8.6.
Compatibility is a topic that I haven't talked about today, but maybe I should have. There are no nasty surprises here. So previous versions of so if you're a translator, you should be able to go on with previous minor versions like 8.5, 8.4, and so on, and work against memoQ servers of version 8.6, or even vice versa. So my point here is that memoQ and memoQ servers had this quite relaxed compatibility for quite a while. And I think this is a very important feature in itself. And what I can say about things that you will start to see in versions coming up after 8.6 is that we are relaxing compatibility also for project managers. So memoQ 8.6 will already be useful for project managers working against higher versions of memoQ server. So 8.6 will be, memoQ 8.6 will be able to manage projects on memoQ server 8.7. And vice versa. And also, starting with the next major version, which is not very far away, and I'm talking about memoQ 9, this will become universal. So any version of memoQ 9, I mean memoQ 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, will be compatible with any version of memoQ server. So there will be complete and unrestricted client-server compatibility there, which means that, for example, if a memoQ server is upgraded, then next morning project managers will not be stopped from their work until they upgrade. Or if there is a project manager who sees new useful functionality in memoQ and wants to upgrade, they don't need to wait until their servers are upgraded, and so on. And there is another use case where your memoQ server is in the memoQ cloud and you are not controlling your memoQ server version, and it can get upgraded basically sometime 1 week after the release of a feature version, so you have no control over it, and this will become less of a pain from now on, when an upgrade of your memoQ server will not stop you from working in the current client version anymore.
Okay, there were some questions where when you were explaining this. I will ask them all together. So, will a translator using 8.6 have any issue with agencies using earlier versions? And also, whether compatibility will be a case or a problem in sub-vendor cases. I guess it's the same.
Sub-vendor cases? Okay, let's talk about the translator case. So the translators should never encounter any compatibility issue with memoQ servers, unless it's an ancient version of memoQ server or an ancient version of memoQ. memoQ and memoQ server must be compatible for translation use cases. And the sub-vendor use cases are by nature probably somewhat more complex. But we are also targeting quite relaxed compatibility in that area as well. But for example, if you are connecting two memoQ servers with our server-to-server functionality, there might be some features that one memoQ server supports. So for example, one memoQ server might already support sharing term bases, while the other is not supporting it yet. So there is a handshake there where the two memoQ servers agree what kind of functionality they can work together on. And that's what you get as an end user. For packages, I think we've been quite compatible for a while. So I wouldn't go into technical details there, but I think if you share translation tasks with a vendor through packages, you probably shouldn't encounter compatibility problems. And yeah, there is yet another type of cooperation between customers and vendors when they both have memoQ server, or not really. So there is a possibility. There is a feature called sub-vendor in memoQ, where a sub-vendor directly uses a customer's memoQ server and have a small user team inside memoQ server of their own and a set of projects of their own on the customer's server. That's and in that case, the fact that we are relaxing compatibility between memoQ clients and memoQ servers, it will help those kinds of users as well. So I think those users who use this kind of sub-vendor functionality will see improvements as well. Sorry for talking so long.
Okay, I think I will just make one last question because we are well over the time. And it's also about compatibility and what happens with those companies using translation business management systems like Plunet, and how does compatibility works here if they want to upgrade?
Plunet, and so our cooperation with Plunet and XTRF, but maybe especially with Plunet, has brought significant improvements in the last year or so. So a while ago, it was quite a fiddly issue to find a version of Plunet and version of memoQ server that fit together and provide the set of functionality that you are looking for. But since then, especially the Plunet team, but maybe also with our assistance, has made great improvements to to try and follow us supporting the latest versions of memoQ server. So without trying to go into specifics here, as far as I know, this has improved a lot. But to know exactly which versions of memoQ server the current version of Plunet or XTRF supports, please check their websites and ask their support first, because they know this better than we do.
Okay, so there were a few questions that we could not answer, but don't worry, because we will collect them and we will get to all of you. And we will send, of course, a recording in a few days. So thank you again for joining us for this session, and I'll see you again on our upcoming webinars.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.